Danny Cole had worked on Orbital Station Harmony 7 for almost 2 years, and in that time he had learned one important rule. Keep your head down, do your job, and never talk to the unless absolutely necessary. There were giants. There was no other way to describe them. The smallest among them stood at least 11 feet tall, and their warriors often reached 13 or 14 feet. They had violet-colored skin that shifted in shade depending on their mood, silver eyes that seemed to look straight through anyone they focused on, and a reputation for being the most dangerous species in the known galaxy. Their warrior culture dated back thousands of years, and they took honor and tradition more seriously than any human could imagine. Danny was not a soldier or a diplomat. He was a logistics coordinator, which was a fancy way of saying he moved supplies from one place to another and made sure the paperwork was correct. It was boring work, but it paid well and kept him far away from anything dangerous. That was exactly how he liked it. On this particular morning, his supervisor-commander had called him into her office with a simple task. The delegation needed their supply manifests delivered to their quarters on the station's upper ring. Normally, a junior assistant would handle such deliveries, but 3 of them had called in sick, and 2 others had flat out refused to go anywhere near the section. Danny had wanted to refuse too, but Commander had given him that look. The one that said his next performance review depended entirely on what came out of his mouth in the next 5 seconds. So here he was, walking through the corridors of the section with a tablet tucked under his arm, and his heart beating so loud he was sure everyone could hear it. The ceilings here were much higher than in the human sections, nearly 20 feet tall to accommodate the giants who lived here. The lighting was dimmer too, with a slight purple tint that they apparently found comfortable. Danny kept his eyes forward and his pace steady. He just needed to deliver the tablet to the reception desk, get a signature, and leave. Simple, easy, nothing could go wrong. He turned a corner and nearly walked straight into a wall of violet skin. Danny stumbled backward, his tablet slipping from his grip. He caught it just before it hit the ground and looked up. Then he kept looking up, because the standing before him was enormous even by their standards. She had to be at least 13 feet tall, with broad shoulders encased in ceremonial armor that gleamed like polished silver. Her silver eyes were fixed on something in the distance, and her expression carried a weight that Danny recognized. She looked like someone who had just received very bad news. For a moment, Danny considered just walking around her without a word. That would be the smart thing to do, the safe thing. But something about the way she stood there, alone in the corridor with that heaviness in her eyes, made him hesitate. His mother had always said he had a problem with staying quiet when he should. She was right. "That armor looks really impressive," Danny heard himself say. "It suits you well." The words hung in the air like a physical thing. The woman slowly turned her head and looked down at him. Her silver eyes widened slightly. Danny became aware of a sudden silence. He glanced around and noticed 3 others had appeared at the far end of the corridor. They had all stopped moving. They were all staring at him with expressions he could not read. "I mean," Danny continued, because apparently his mouth had decided to stop listening to his brain entirely, "the craftsmanship is really nice. The way the light catches the metal, very pretty." The silence grew deeper. Danny felt sweat forming on the back of his neck. He had made a mistake. He had no idea what the mistake was, but he was absolutely certain he had made one. The giant woman took a step toward him, then another. Each footfall made the floor vibrate slightly beneath Danny's feet. She stopped directly in front of him, so close that he had to crane his neck back to see her face. She spoke words in the language. Her voice was deep and resonant, like distant thunder rolling across mountains. Danny had no idea what she said, but the formal tone was unmistakable. "I'm sorry," he stammered. "I don't understand. I was just trying to be polite." One of them from down the corridor approached. He was older, with gray streaks in his dark hair and a translation device hanging from his belt. He listened as the woman spoke again, then his expression shifted to something Danny could only describe as shock. "Human," the older said carefully, "do you know who this is?" "No," Danny admitted. "Should I?" "This is daughter of clan leader, one of the finest warriors of her generation." Danny swallowed hard. "Oh, that's very impressive." "You have spoken the words of intention to her," the older continued. "You have praised her armor in the traditional manner. By our law, this is a formal declaration of courtship." Danny's brain needed a moment to process that. "Wait, what?" "She has accepted your words. The bond is witnessed." Danny looked up at. She was still watching him with those unreadable silver eyes. Slowly, deliberately, she reached down and placed her massive hand on his shoulder. Her palm was warm, and her fingers wrapped almost entirely around to his back. She spoke again. This time, Danny caught a single word that sounded almost like his name. "What did she say?" he whispered. The translator hesitated. "She said that you are small but you have courage. She will honor your words with the trials of her clan. You will prove yourself worthy, or you will be released from your obligation." "Trials?" Danny's voice came out much higher than he intended. "What trials?" Smiled. It was not a comforting expression. Then she turned and walked away, her armored boots echoing through the corridor until she disappeared around a corner. Danny stood frozen in place. His tablet hung loosely in his grip. The other in the corridor were still watching him, their expressions ranging from amusement to what might have been pity. He had come here to deliver supply manifests. He had complimented someone's armor because she looked sad and he wanted to be nice. Now, apparently, he was engaged to a 13-foot-tall alien warrior princess who expected him to complete some kind of trials to prove his worth. Commander was going to kill him, if the trials did not kill him first. The conference room on Orbital Station Harmony 7 had never felt so small. Danny sat at one end of a long table, surrounded by human diplomats, military officers, and his very angry supervisor. At the other end sat the delegation, including the older translator from the corridor and two warriors who looked like they could tear the station apart with their bare hands. Commander stood with her arms crossed and her jaw tight. She had not spoken directly to Danny since he returned from the section yesterday. Her silence was somehow worse than any shouting could have been. "Let me understand this correctly," said Ambassador Lane, the senior human diplomat on the station. She was a thin woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "You complimented her armor." "Yes, ma'am," Danny said quietly. "And among the complimenting a warrior's armor is equivalent to a marriage proposal." "Apparently so, ma'am." Ambassador Lane closed her eyes and took a very deep breath. Did no one in logistics receive cultural sensitivity training? "We did," Commander said through clenched teeth. "The training specifically warned against commenting on ceremonial items. Someone clearly was not paying attention." Danny wanted to defend himself, but he had no defense. He had sat through that training. He had probably been thinking about lunch or checking his messages while the instructor explained the exact mistake he would later make. This was entirely his fault. The older translator leaned forward. His name was, and he served as the delegation's primary liaison with humans. "The situation is unfortunate, but not. Among our people, the courtship trials provide an honorable path forward." "Explain these trials," Ambassador Lane said. Folded his massive hands on the table. "When a suitor declares intention to a warrior of a great clan, they must prove their worth through 3 trials. The trial of endurance tests the body. The trial of mind tests wisdom and strategy. The trial of heart tests the truth of one's feelings. If the suitor completes all 3 trials, the bond is formalized. If they fail, they may withdraw with honor intact." "And if he refuses to participate at all?" Commander asked. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. The expression grew cold. Then the words spoken become an insult rather than a declaration, would be dishonored before her clan. The alliance between our peoples would be damaged, perhaps beyond repair. House has many enemies who would use such an insult as justification for breaking the peace accords. Danny felt sick. He had not just embarrassed himself. He had potentially endangered an entire alliance between species. Thousands of people on both sides could be affected by trade disruptions, or worse, actual conflict. "I'll do it," he said. Everyone turned to look at him. "The trials," Danny continued. "I'll attempt them, I won't refuse." Commander stared at him. "Cole, you're a logistics coordinator. These trials are designed for warriors, people who have trained their entire lives for physical and mental challenges." "I know," Danny said, "but if I don't try, I make everything worse. At least if I attempt the trials and fail, I fail with honor. That's what's said, right? Honor intact." Nodded slowly. "That is correct. A suitor who attempts the trials and fails is still respected for their courage. Only cowardice brings shame." Danny stood up from his chair. His legs felt unsteady, but he forced himself to stand straight. "Then I'll try. Whatever happens, I'll try." Ambassador Lane studied him for a long moment. Something like respect flickered in her eyes. "Very well, Mr. Cole, we will make the necessary arrangements." She turned to, "When do the trials begin?" "The first trial will take place in 3 days, on the moon of Hour. I will ensure transportation is provided." The meeting ended shortly after. As Danny walked toward the door, a voice stopped him. "Human, wait." He turned, stood in the corridor outside the conference room. She must have been waiting there the entire time. In the brighter lighting of the human section, she seemed even more imposing. Her violet skin was darker now, which Danny remembered from his training meant she was experiencing strong emotion. He just could not tell which emotion. The other Inhumans filtered away, leaving them alone in the corridor. Looked down at him with those silver eyes that revealed nothing. "You agreed to attempt the trials," she said. Her voice was deep but softer than before, and she spoke in accented but clear English. "Yes," Danny said. "I'm sorry for the misunderstanding. I didn't know what my words meant. I was just trying to be kind." "I know." Danny blinked. "You know." His expression shifted slightly. It might have been amusement. "I have studied your species. I know that humans give compliments freely without deeper meaning. When you spoke to me, I knew you were ignorant of our customs." "Then why did you accept? Why start all of this if you knew I didn't mean it?" Was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was thoughtful. "I received difficult news yesterday. Political enemies of my clan are moving against my father. I felt alone and burdened. Then a small human appeared and told me my armor was pretty." She paused. "No one has said such a thing to me in many years. Among my people I am feared and respected, but rarely do others speak to me with simple kindness. Your words, even spoken in ignorance, were a gift." Danny did not know what to say to that. "Our law required me to respond formally," continued. "To ignore your words would have insulted you, even if you did not understand why. But the trials give you a path to honorable release. You may attempt them, fail, and we will part as respected equals. That is what I expected when I accepted." "You expected me to fail," Danny said. "Yes," tilted her head slightly. "Do you blame me for that expectation? You are small. You have no training in warfare or endurance. The trials will be very difficult for you." Danny considered his answer carefully. "No, I don't blame you, but I'm going to try anyway." "Why?" "Because my words caused this situation. Even if I didn't understand what they meant, I still spoke them. Where I come from, you take responsibility for the things you say and do, even when you mess up. Especially when you mess up." Studied him in silence. Then slowly, her lips curved into something that was almost a smile. "Perhaps you are more interesting than I initially believed, Danny Cole." She turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing through the corridor. Danny watched her go, his heart pounding and his mind racing. 3 days until the first trial. 3 days to prepare for something designed to challenge beings twice his size and 10 times his strength. He had absolutely no idea how he was going to survive this. But he was going to try. The moon of the was a brutal place. Danny felt this truth in every fiber of his being as he stood at the starting line of the trial of endurance, his lungs already struggling against the thin atmosphere and his legs trembling under gravity nearly twice what he was used to. The march stretched before him across a landscape of red rock and black sand. The path wound through jagged canyons and over steep ridges, disappearing into a haze of dust near the distant horizon. Youngsters completed this course in 4 hours. Danny had been told he would be given 12 hours to finish, a concession to his human limitations. 12 hours of walking in crushing gravity under a burning sun. The medical team had given him supplements and adjusted his suit to help him breathe, but there was only so much technology could do. His body would have to do the rest. Nearly 50 had gathered to watch the trial begin. Most of them looked at Danny with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright doubt. He was the smallest being present by a considerable margin. Standing among the giants, he felt like a child who had wandered into a gathering of adults. Stood apart from the crowd. As his formal witness, she would walk alongside him for the entire trial. She was not allowed to help him physically, but tradition permitted her to offer guidance and encouragement. Danny was grateful for that. At least he would not be completely alone out there. Clan leader stepped forward to address the assembly. He was older than his daughter, with silver streaking through his dark hair and deep lines carved into his violet features. His eyes were the same silver as, and they fixed on Danny with an intensity that made the young human want to look away. The trial of endurance tests the fire within, the clan leader announced. Any creature can be born strong. True strength is forged through suffering and persistence. Today we witness whether this human carries such fire. A horn sounded. The trial had begun. Danny started walking. The first hour was manageable. His body protested against the gravity, every step requiring more effort than it should, but he found a rhythm. Left foot, right foot, breathe, repeat. He had worked long shifts in warehouses before joining the logistics corps. He knew how to push through discomfort. Walked beside him in silence. Her long legs covered ground effortlessly, while Danny had to take 3 steps for every one of hers. She matched his pace without complaint, her expression thoughtful as she watched him struggle. The second hour brought the first real pain. Danny's calves burned with every step. His lower back ached from the constant strain of holding himself upright against the crushing gravity. Sweat soaked through his suit, despite the cooling systems working at maximum capacity. "You are slowing," observed. It was not a criticism, merely a statement of fact. "I know," Danny gasped. "Just need to find my second wind." What is second wind? It's something humans talk about. When you're exhausted and you think you can't keep going, sometimes your body finds new strength. A second wind. Consider this. Among my people, we call it the awakening of the inner flame, the moment when the spirit refuses to surrender even as the flesh fails. Same idea, Danny managed, different words. He kept walking. The third hour nearly broke him. Danny stumbled on a loose rock and fell hard, his knees slamming into the ground. The impact sent agony shooting through his legs. He stayed down, hands pressed against the red dirt, breathing in ragged gasps. He could stop. The medical team was tracking him. If he raised his hand, they would come and take him back to the ship. The trial would be over. He would have failed, but at least the pain would end. Danny thought about the warehouse in Detroit where he had worked as a teenager. 16 years old, loading boxes for 12 hours a day to help his mother pay rent after his father left. His back had screamed at him then too. His arms had trembled with exhaustion. But stopping had not been an option. His family needed him. He thought about the 2 jobs he had worked through college, surviving on 4 hours of sleep because giving up meant letting everyone down. He thought about all the times his body had told him he was finished, and all the times he had proven his body wrong. Danny pushed himself up from the ground and kept walking. Watched him rise. Something shifted in her silver eyes, though Danny was too focused on moving forward to notice. The hours blurred together. The 4th, the 5th, the 6th. Danny lost track of time. He lost track of everything except the next step. His world narrowed to a single point of focus: keep moving forward. At some point he realized was speaking to him. Her voice was low and steady, a constant rhythm that matched his footsteps. When I was young, I thought strength meant never feeling pain. I trained harder than anyone in my generation because I wanted to be invincible. Then I fought my first real battle. I was wounded badly. I learned that true warriors feel pain like everyone else. The difference is that they do not let the pain decide their fate. Danny could not respond. He needed every breath for walking. But he heard her. He clung to her words like a lifeline. "You are in great pain right now," continued. "I can see it, but you have not stopped. You have not even slowed for the last 2 hours. Your body is screaming at you and you are ignoring it completely. This is remarkable, Danny Cole." The finish line appeared through the dust. Danny saw it and felt something crack open inside his chest. Not pain, something else. Something that might have been hope. He crossed the line after 11 hours and 43 minutes. Youngsters completed the course in 4 hours. He had taken nearly 3 times as long, but he had finished. Danny collapsed immediately. The medical team rushed forward, but before they reached him, knelt at his side. Her massive form blocked out the sun, casting him in cool shadow. "You finished," she said softly. "The trial is complete." "Did I pass?" Danny whispered. His voice was barely audible. Clan leader approached. He stood over Danny's broken form and studied him for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried across the assembled crowd. "In all my years, I have seen many warriors complete this trial. Some finish quickly and boast of their strength. Others struggle and complain. Never have I seen someone suffer as this human has suffered, and never once cry out or beg for rest." He paused. The fire within him burns brighter than many of our own youth. The first trial is past. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Danny heard it from very far away. He was already slipping into unconsciousness, exhausted beyond anything he had ever experienced. The last thing he felt was hand gently lifting him from the ground. Danny woke in a medical bay that smelled of unfamiliar herbs and hummed with technology he did not recognize. His entire body ached in ways he had never experienced before, but the pain was manageable now. Someone had treated his injuries while he slept. He turned his head and found sitting beside his bed. She looked tired, which surprised him. He had not thought could look tired. "How long was I unconscious?" Danny asked. His voice came out rough and scratchy. 14 hours, replied. "Your human physicians were concerned. They said you pushed your body beyond safe limits." "But I finished." "Yes, you finished." Something warm flickered in silver eyes. "My father has not stopped talking about you. He says you remind him of warriors from the old stories, the ones who won battles through sheer refusal to accept defeat." Danny tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Every muscle in his body protested violently. He settled back against the pillows with a groan. "When is the next trial?" "The trial of mine takes place in 3 days. You will have time to recover." "What does it involve?" Leaned back in her chair. "You will be given a strategic scenario, a military puzzle that our war academies have used for generations. You must find the correct solution. Our finest tacticians will be watching." Danny nodded slowly. Physical endurance was one thing. He had spent his whole life learning to push through pain and exhaustion. but military strategy was completely outside his experience. He had never commanded anything more complex than a warehouse inventory system. "Can you tell me about past scenarios?" he asked, "so I can understand what to expect." "I cannot give you specific information about the trial itself. That would violate the rules." Paused thoughtfully. "But I can tell you this. Our people value strength in battle, but our greatest leaders have always understood that true victory requires more than force. The scenario will seem impossible at first. That is by design. The solution is never obvious." 3 days later, Danny stood in the ancient debate halls of the capital city. The chamber was enormous, built to accommodate beings twice his size, with seats rising in tiers around a central platform where he now stood alone. Hundreds of watched from above, including warriors, scholars, and members of the ruling clans. A massive holographic display flickered to life before him. It showed a star system with 3 inhabited planets and dozens of military installations. Text scrolled across the bottom of the display, explaining the scenario. 2 fleets were locked in conflict over control of the system. The first fleet belonged to House's family. The second belonged to their bitter rivals, House Al. Both fleets were evenly matched. Both had dug into defensive positions around their respective planets. Any direct assault would result in massive casualties on both sides, potentially destroying both houses and leaving the system vulnerable to outside threats. Danny was playing the role of a house commander. His objective was to achieve victory with minimal losses. He studied the display for a long time. The audience grew restless. He heard murmurs from the seats above, comments about how the human was already lost, how this trial would be over quickly. Danny ignored them. He was thinking. The obvious solutions were all bad. A frontal assault would be devastating. A flanking maneuver would leave his base exposed. Siege tactics would drag the conflict out for years, weakening both sides until neither could defend against external enemies. He thought about what had told him. The solution is never obvious. True victory requires more than force. Danny pulled up the detailed information on both fleets. He studied the supply lines, the communication networks, the alliances each house had formed with neutral parties. He dug into the historical data provided about the conflict, tracing its origins back through decades of rivalry and resentment. Then he found something interesting. A third party appeared in the records, a merchant guild that had been trading with both houses for generations. The guild had profited enormously from the conflict, selling weapons and supplies to both sides while encouraging continued hostility. Danny traced the guild's activities further. Assassinations that had been blamed on House Al had actually been funded by guild intermediaries. Diplomatic failures that pushed the houses toward war had been sabotaged by guild agents. The entire conflict had been engineered and sustained by outsiders who benefited from killing. He looked up at the assembled audience and took a deep breath. "I have my solution," Danny announced. The chamber fell silent. Clan leader gestured for him to continue. "The correct answer is not to fight House Al at all," Danny said. "The correct answer is to expose the merchant guild's manipulation and propose a joint operation with our enemies to destroy the true threat." Chaos erupted, shouted from the stands, some in anger and others in confused surprise. A gray-haired general rose from his seat and demanded to know how a human could propose surrendering to their enemies. "I'm not proposing surrender," Danny replied, raising his voice to be heard over the noise. "I'm proposing victory, real victory. If House and House Al continue fighting, we both lose. We weaken each other until we can't defend against anyone. The only winners are the manipulators who started this war." He pointed at the holographic display. "Look at the evidence. The guild has played both sides for decades. They assassinated leaders and blamed us on each other. They sabotaged peace talks. They've made fortunes selling weapons while warriors died for lies." The chamber had grown quiet again. Danny continued. If I present this evidence to House Al and propose a temporary alliance to destroy the guild, several things happen. First, we eliminate a common enemy. Second, we recover resources the guild has stolen from both houses. Third, we create a foundation for lasting peace between our houses because we will have fought together instead of against each other. He looked directly at clan leader. You asked me to find victory with minimal losses. This is the only path that achieves true victory. Every other solution ends with dead and the real enemy untouched. Silence held the chamber, then stood from her seat. The trial of mind tests wisdom and strategy, she said. Her voice rang clear through the hall. My suitor was given a war and found a path to peace. He was asked to defeat our enemies and instead showed us we have been fighting the wrong enemy all along. Is this not the highest form of strategic thinking? Clan leader studied Danny for a long moment. His expression was unreadable. The scenario has been used for 200 years, the clan leader finally said. Many have found military solutions of varying quality. None have ever questioned the nature of the conflict itself. He paused. The trial is past. Danny released a breath he had not realized he was holding. That night came to his quarters on the station. She sat across from him in a chair built for her size, while he occupied a human-scaled seat that made the difference between them even more apparent. You surprised everyone today, she said. I surprised myself, Danny admitted. I kept thinking about what you said, that true victory requires more than force. The more I looked at the scenario, the more I realized the whole war was wrong. Someone had to be benefiting from it. Tilted her head. Humans think differently than my people. We are raised to face enemies directly, to meet challenges with strength. You looked at the same problem and asked why the problem existed at all. Is that a bad thing? No, his voice softened. It is fascinating. I find myself wanting to understand how your mind works, how you see patterns we miss because we are too close to see them. They talked for hours after that. Danny told her about Earth, about growing up poor and working hard and never giving up because giving up was not an option. Told him about the pressures of being a clan leader's daughter, the expectations placed on her since childhood, the loneliness of being feared rather than known. By the time she left, something had changed between them. Danny could not name it yet, but he felt it. One trial remained. The final trial took place on Orbital Station Harmony 7, in a grand assembly hall that had been prepared for the occasion. Rows of seats rose on both sides, filled with dignitaries on one side and human diplomats on the other. Ambassador Lane sat in the front row of the human section, her expression carefully neutral. Commander sat beside her, looking like she still could not quite believe any of this was happening. Danny stood alone in the center of the hall. He wore simple clothes, nothing ceremonial or impressive. He was just himself, a logistics coordinator from Earth who had somehow ended up here through a combination of bad luck and stubborn determination. Sat on a raised platform among her clan members. Her silver eyes never left Danny's face. She had explained the trial of heart to him the night before. It was simple in concept but terrifying in practice. He had to speak the truth about his feelings, all of it, in front of everyone. The could detect lies through subtle changes in body chemistry and vocal patterns. Deception was nearly impossible. If Danny spoke anything less than complete honesty, they would know immediately. The trial would fail, and everything he had endured would mean nothing. Clan leader rose to address the assembly. His voice carried easily through the silent hall. The trial of heart is the most sacred of the three trials. Strength can be trained, wisdom can be taught, but truth must come from within. The suitor will now speak honestly about his intentions, his feelings, and his journey to this moment. We will know if he lies. The clan leader sat down. Every eye in the hall turned to Danny. He took a deep breath and began to speak. I made a mistake, Danny said. His voice was steady despite the fear churning in his stomach. I walked into a corridor and saw someone who looked sad. I wanted to say something nice. I didn't know that my words would start all of this. That's the truth. He paused, gathering his thoughts. When I found out what I had done, I was terrified. I wanted to run away. I wanted someone else to fix the problem I had created. I'm not brave. I'm not a warrior. I'm just a guy who moves boxes and fills out paperwork. The idea of facing trials designed for warriors made me want to hide in my quarters and never come out. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Danny pressed on. But I couldn't run. Not because I'm brave, but because my words had consequences. Even though I didn't understand what I was saying, I still said it. Where I come from, you don't get to escape responsibility just because you didn't mean to cause harm. The harm still happened. You still have to answer for it. He looked up at the rows of watching him. So I agreed to the trials. I expected to fail. I think everyone expected me to fail. A human against challenges designed for beings twice my size. It seemed impossible. Danny's eyes found on her platform. Then I really met her. Not just as the giant warrior I accidentally proposed to, but as a person. I learned that she feels lonely sometimes. I learned that she carries the weight of her entire clan's expectations on her shoulders. I learned that she accepted my words not to trap me, but because someone showing her simple kindness was rare enough to matter. His voice grew stronger. During the trial of endurance, she walked beside me for nearly 12 hours. She talked to me when I wanted to give up. She told me about her own struggles, her own pain. She treated me like an equal even though I could barely put one foot in front of the other. He thought about the conversation they had shared after the trial of mind, talking until dawn about their lives and dreams and fears. I started this journey because I had no choice. I continued because I wanted to prove I wasn't a coward, but somewhere along the way, something changed. Danny took another breath. This was the hardest part. I'm not in love with, not yet, we barely know each other. It would be a lie to stand here and claim otherwise. He saw surprise flicker across several faces. But I care about her. I respect her. I want to keep learning who she is. I want to deserve the respect she has shown me. He straightened his shoulders and spoke directly too. I can't promise to be worthy of a warrior like you. I'm not strong or wise or impressive by any standard that matters to your people. But I can promise to keep trying, every day, to become someone who deserves the kindness you showed a confused human in a corridor, to become someone you might actually want to know, not because tradition demands it, but because I earned it. The hall was completely silent. Danny felt exposed in a way he had never experienced before, stripped of every defense and pretense. Rose from her seat. She descended from the platform, each step deliberate and measured. The assembled witnesses watched in breathless silence as she crossed the hall and stopped directly in front of Danny. She was so tall, he had to crane his neck back to see her face. The difference between them had never felt more obvious. Then did something that made everyone in the hall gasp. She knelt. A 13-foot warrior princess knelt before a human logistics coordinator, bringing their faces almost level for the first time since they met. Among my people, said softly, warriors never kneel. To kneel is to acknowledge that another stands above you in honor and worth. Her silver eyes met his. You have shown me more courage than warriors twice your size. You have shown me wisdom that our greatest tacticians missed. And now you have shown me honesty that I did not expect but desperately wanted. She reached out and took his hands in hers. Her grip was gentle despite the strength he knew she possessed. I do not accept you because tradition demands it. I accept you because you have proven yourself extraordinary. Not by standards, but by standards that matter far more. You have shown me what humans truly are. Stood, lifting Danny's hands with her as she rose. She turned to face the assembly, one arm wrapped carefully around his shoulders. This human has completed all 3 trials, not by matching strength, but by showing us qualities we had forgotten to value: persistence in the face of impossible odds, creativity that finds solutions we could not imagine, and honesty brave enough to admit imperfection while striving to be better. Clan leader rose from his seat. His expression had shifted to something Danny had never seen before: respect, genuine respect. The trials are complete. The bond is formally accepted. Let no one question this union. Applause erupted from both sides of the hall. Danny saw Ambassador Lane smiling for the first time since this whole situation began. Even Commander looked something other than furious. In the chaos of celebration that followed, leaned down to speak quietly in Danny's ear. "I hope you understand what you have committed to. Partnership with A is not simple." Danny laughed despite himself. "Nothing about this has been simple since the moment I opened my mouth in that corridor." Smiled. It transformed her face completely, softening the warrior's intensity into something warm and surprisingly gentle. "Then we will figure it out together," she said, "one step at a time." Later that evening, after the ceremonies had ended and the diplomats had returned to their quarters, Danny stood at a viewport watching the stars. Stood beside him, her presence warm and solid in the quiet darkness. "I still can't believe any of this happened," Danny admitted. "Neither can I," replied. "A simple compliment to a sad warrior, and now here we are." Danny looked up at her. "Do you regret it, any of it?" Considered the question carefully. "I was taught that strength comes from within, that true warriors forge their own paths, but I think perhaps the greatest strength is allowing others to walk beside us." She placed her hand on his shoulder, gentle as always despite her size. "I do not regret it, Danny Cole, not for a moment." They stood together in silence, human and watching the stars turn slowly beyond the viewport. Sometimes the greatest connections begin with the smallest words. Sometimes courage means admitting you are afraid and trying anyway. And sometimes a simple compliment can change everything.